Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to continue reviewing PwC's New Equation. And as we said in a previous podcast where we covered the beginning of it, we talked about how everything's a trust solution, and it's this new equation of really just rebranding PwC into two organizations, a trust organization and a consulting organization. But when I really dove into the New Equation press release, I learned that it's really only two things that they're actually doing anything about. The first is they have this other page called Tomorrow Takes Trust, where they're trying to build this trust paradigm. I'll explain that in a little bit, but they've established this Tomorrow Takes Trust fund, and then their second thing is they're just splitting the organization into trust solutions and consulting solutions. So those are basically the only two things that they're really doing here. And I tweeted at PwC, I wanted to understand if this is really something new and you're taking it seriously, then who is the CEO of this new trust solutions organization? And I mean, I already know the answer. The answer is there is no new CEO because there's nothing really new here other than creating this trust-based principles organization, the side organization. And so I wanted to talk about that. So they didn't even talk about that in the press release. They make you go to this other link of Tomorrow Takes Trust. And what they're using is a 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer. I have no idea what this is, but I can already guess that PwC paid or created this organization and just to give them the answer they wanted. And what the answer that it gave them was that, hey, businesses have become the only trusted institution, which is also false. But in this page, PwC says that between business, non-governmental organizations, government, and media, businesses are trusted the most. So in order to do that, PwC put $300 million into this. And then they're going to equip more than 10,000 business leaders to build trust around tomorrow's challenges and realities. And it's also, you have to be diverse to get into this cohort of 10,000 people. And it says it's going to be executives or board members. And I can tell you right now that they're going to really struggle getting people to enroll in this. $300 million seems like a lot, but it's not really that much for PwC based on the amount of work they're winning. But all this boils down to is that PwC is offering what I think is, they use the word trust, but I think it's don't get canceled service. And I just saw an interview I had not seen before about Tim Ryan on CNN Business, which is great. I'm working on editing that down so that I can release it on here as a podcast. But he talks about all this fear, the world's going to a bad place in the handbasket, and it's going to be that way for 10 years. And he was just gloom and doom, typical Tim Ryan about how diversity is so important and all this gloom and doom, and you need to invest in this trust-based thing. So basically it's, hey, businesses are trusted out of all these organizations. Let PwC help you keep that and not get canceled so you can join our little executive leadership program, which is, I guess, is like getting a CPE for an executive. And then also there's all these other ways you can get canceled through ESG, through diversity, through fighting against governments. So you're going to need a consultant to do that. So basically, PwC is taking advantage of the social upheaval from the pandemic, from all the racial stuff going on. And I mean, Tim Ryan's the worst at it, but they're taking advantage of it, and they're trying to box it into this trust solutions, which is very confusing because they're using trust as the way to sell it, but it's very confusing because it's not really clear what their trust solutions do, and both their trust and consulting solutions sound exactly the same, sound like they're doing exactly the same. But that's what I've boiled it down to, is it's this new teaching thing that they're going to do, and they're going to offer it to businesses, and it's a way for businesses not to get canceled. And they're not the first company or consulting firm to do this, but they just make it seem like they're at the forefront. But I mean, and something from that CNN business interview that I really liked was the host called out Tim Ryan, and I feel like I did that about a week ago as well. It probably coincided with that, and I didn't even know that interview was out. But she asked him, if you're really invested in the future, then why are you still at the head of PwC as an old white man? And you should have seen him squirm in his chair. But it was hilarious because I think he realized right then that people were catching on to what he was doing. And the whole interview was just him using societal upheaval to turn a buck for PwC, and that he's not going to step down or change his ways until he's ready to retire. Then once he's ready to retire, he's going to turn it over to somebody that's diverse, but not yet. And I think this is just more continuation of that. And I think all this does is just confuse people. And PwC has done this before. They've had people in their business put out these books. Like, I think there was a guy that put out something about mega trends, and they tried to ship that to clients. And, like, hey, there's all these things that are changing around the world. You need to invest in this new solution. And that nobody bid onto that. Tim Ryan's tried with other diversity measures and tried to use racial tensions to turn profits for PwC, and it hasn't worked. So they're just trying again and hoping that it sticks. And I think that PwC is really going to struggle to not only educate their clients about what all of this relates to, but also to educate their employees as to what they're supposed to do, because it's not even clear based on any of these press releases. And I mean, this is the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast. I specialize in looking at this stuff, and I can't tell what they're doing. So I think it's supposed to be that way. I think it's supposed to be a wink and a nod to not getting canceled. And I'm sure there's discussions behind the scenes with clients, like, hey, this is what this trust solutions thing really is. Because whenever you take this politically correct stuff to clients, they don't really see how it's going to impact their job. Because if you're a CFO or CEO right now, you're worried about supply chains and the disruption from the pandemic. You're worried about investors. You are worried about, doing the right things, but you're not worried about understanding what PwC's rebranding is all about and like what the actual services are. The list of services in here does not look like it's really changed from what PwC normally does. So it's unclear as to what new offerings they have, if any, and what I think it boils down to based on my reading of it and Tim Ryan's recent interview is that they're just offering don't get canceled solutions. And they're hoping that executives can read between the lines and give them money for it. I'm not sure how you price something like this, but we'll learn more. And I think another important thing about this trust solutions stuff is to understand how it will fit within the PwC business model. Is it going to be its own separate business division? When they release their financial statements, will there be a trust solutions thing, or are they still going to break it out into assurance, tax, and consulting? I guarantee you it's going to be the old way, and that people are still going to be measured in the old way. They're not going to be measured on trust or how many diversity trainings they've taken. I'm sure there will be mandatory diversity trainings, but I don't think we'll see that in their financial reports until people like CNN keep calling them out for it. So that's the podcast for today. We're probably still going to dive more into this because there's a lot to learn here about PwC and what they're going to do. But also we're going to be covering that Tim Ryan interview just so people can see what he says and basically how much of a hypocrite he is. So make sure to subscribe to this podcast, stay up to date, and support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link if you can. And if you can't, then I'd like to thank you for listening anyway.